When I first imagined the food forest planner, the basic idea seemed fairly simple. Put plants on a map, move them around, and gradually build a layout. But almost immediately, I ran into a problem. A plant is not really just a point on a map. That small tree you placed today could eventually occupy several meters of space. And once I started looking at plants at their mature size, every decision around them began to change. The earliest idea behind the planner was to give each plant a real sense of scale. Instead of representing an apple tree and a small shrub with similar icons, the circles would show the approximate width each plant could reach when mature. That sounds like a really small detail, but it truly changed how I looked at the entire design. Without that information, I could create something that looked neat and well organized. I could fit plenty of plants into a small area, leave some pathways between them, and feel like I had created a reasonable plan. But the layout would only represent the plants as I imagined them now. It wouldn't really represent the space they might occupy years later. This is where planning started to become more interesting, but also more difficult. If I put another tree here, it might look comfortably separated from the first one. But when both plants are shown at their mature width, their canopies begin to overlap. Then I move one of them away, and it starts overlapping with something else. I move that plant, and now our path becomes too narrow. A single change can affect the entire layout around it. This was one of the first moments where the planner began doing something I couldn't easily do in my head. It wasn't giving me the correct answer. It was making the consequence of each choice truly visible. And I think that distinction is really important. The planner currently warns me when plants in the same layer overlap at their mature size, but I deliberately think of this as a warning and not an error. Food forests use density and overlapping layers intentionally. Two canopies touching each other doesn't automatically mean the design is wrong. There may be good reason to plant things closer together. Some plants might be removed later. Some may be pruned. Their actual growth will depend on their conditions, and different species won't necessarily grow into perfect circles. So the two shouldn't pretend that overlap is always bad. The warning is really asking a question. Did I choose this overlap, or did I simply fail to notice it? That is the kind of role I want the planner to have. Not to design the food forest for someone, but to point at relationships that deserve attention. There was another problem though. Even with circles showing mature size, distances on the screen can be pretty deceptive. Depending on how far I zoom in or out, two plants can feel very close or very far apart. So measurements become another early addition. Now I can check the actual distance between 2 points instead of judging it only by appearance. That becomes useful for more than just plant spacing. It could help with the width of a path, the distance from a boundary, or the amount of room available around something that already exists on the site. Again, the measurement doesn't tell me what the distance should be. It just gives me something concrete to base the decision on. These additions changed the original idea more than I expected. At first, I thought the planner would mainly help arranging plants, but mature sizes, spacing warnings, and measurements made it feel more like a way of examining decisions. A layout can look beautiful while still hiding problems, and a layout that looks crowded may actually represent an intentional and layered design. The important part is understanding why things are placed where they are. I also have to be careful about the sense of certainty a visual tool can create. These circles are based on plant information, but they are still only approximations. A real plant won't grow as a perfectly symmetrical shape. Soil, water, light, pruning, climate, competition, and many other factors will affect what happens with the plant. The planner can help someone think about mature space, but it cannot predict exactly how a living system will grow. That limitation is something I want to keep visible as the project develops. So, one of the first lessons from building this planner was surprisingly simple. Putting plants on a map is not enough. They need scale, they need space, and when their space begins to overlap, the tool should help us notice without automatically deciding whether that overlap is right or wrong. I'm curious how people with practical experience will approach this. When designing a food forest, how much canopy overlap do you intentionally allow? And how do you decide when plants are becoming too crowded? I would especially like to hear whether a simple spacing warning like this is even useful, or whether it misses something important about how food forests are actually designed. If you would like to follow how the planner develops, I will continue sharing what I'm learning and the questions that come out of building it. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.